Shalom from Galilee, from Israel. And this is Amir Tsarfati, and I would love to start with some Middle East news. And then we're going to go further to Europe, and then all the way to the United States, and we will try to understand what in the world is going on. So just so you know, guys, just a few hours ago, we started receiving a lot of footage from the city of Tatawin, which is in Tunisia, close to the Libyan border. And the reason why I mentioned that is because chaos is going on in Libya, and much of that chaos is perpetrated by the Sultan Erdogan, that is just causing so much instability in that area by ways of bringing weapons and bringing some mercenaries from northern Syria, and just basically destabilizing the entire northern African area, so he will gain back control over it, is in the old days of the Ottoman Empire. And this is exactly what bothers President Assisi in Egypt. I want you to know that Assisi is being mocked by the Islamic Brotherhood that is basically supported by Erdogan. I can show you this thing that they just put online. It is the Emirates, the United Arab Emirates, that are actually shooting Assisi towards Tunisia and Algeria and Libya. And just so you know, basically this alone tells you that the Muslim Brotherhood is laughing at Assisi and at the moderate Arab world. And the reason why I mentioned that is because you need to understand right now that there are two major enemies to the moderate Sunni world today. One is Iran and one is Turkey. They're not of the same faith when it comes to Shiite and Sunni, but both are not Arab. Turks are not Arabs, Persians are not Arabs, and these are now standing as the problem of the Arab world. And guess who is the only person or the only country that stands in the Middle East that can help those Arab countries in the fight against Iran right now, and maybe even in the future against Turkey? That is, of course, Israel. And this is exactly why none of us should be afraid right now here in Israel of what the moderate Sunni Muslim world is going to say if, God forbid, we annex the Jordan Valley in the next few weeks. So let's move on to Lebanon. Very important. Look, the Lebanese are standing in a dilemma right now. There is the option to resuscitate their economy only in one condition, and the condition is that Hezbollah will be disarmed. And the other option is to throw to the garbage your economy and your country and let Hezbollah run the show. Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, just told his people, please wait patiently until November. President Trump will be moved, and then we can move forward. Ladies and gentlemen, when a terrorist organization wishes President Trump to be removed, you can tell what President Trump is standing for. Look, Iran wants him to be removed. Venezuela wants him to be removed. Hezbollah wants him to be removed. The Palestinians, Hamas, and all of that, they want him to be removed. Islamic Brotherhood wants him to be removed. You understand what he's standing for if all of those wants him to be removed. And why is it so important to the Lebanese that President Trump will not be anymore in office? Because of the recently implemented Caesar Act. Caesar, by the way, was the nickname of a journalist, a photographer that a few years ago managed to smuggle photographs of the torturing chambers of Assad, of his own people. and those pictures made it to the West, and then, of course, caused a lot of governments in the West to understand the depth of depravity of the Syrian regime. And the United States immediately started acting upon it. And President Trump, a few months ago, at the end of last year, already signed the bill to impose sanctions on the Syrian regime and on anyone that is doing business with them. And that's where Lebanon is getting into the picture. Tons of Lebanese companies and Lebanese conglomerates and Lebanese government officials are involved with Syrian affairs, because literally Iran is combining Syria with Lebanon, with Iraq and Iran, and Nasrallah is sending all of these troops of Hezbollah to help Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. So Lebanon and Syria are so tied together that it is affecting instantly almost every Lebanese bank, Lebanese company, and service provider. And that is where the Lebanese are now under so much pressure. Caesar Act that started being implemented on June 17 is already showing its pressure on the Lebanese economy. And this is why the terrorist organization Hezbollah says, look, this is all Trump. This is all his craziness. Don't worry. Wait a few more months. He has to be removed and we'll move forward. That's what is going on right now with Lebanon. And I would like you to know, folks, I would like you to know that this is the wish of almost every terrorist organization in the Middle East. And Hezbollah is now changing tactics. They realize, look, the people in Lebanon don't like us. Right now, we are the biggest problem. So what did they do? They just tweeted yesterday a picture and a video, basically, that says mission accomplished. In other words, they wanted the Israelis to think that they've already reached their goal of precision weapon factories that are already fully operating. And they released a video that shows Israeli critical high-level security installations with their GPS coordinate, and basically saying, look, now we have the capability of hitting you guys. Look, this is old tactic of someone who wants to intimidate people. And the Israelis used to eat from the hand of Hassan Nasrallah and his lies and deception, but no more. No more. Not only the Israelis don't believe him anymore, but even the Lebanese themselves don't believe him anymore. And we're watching an ever-changing Middle East where Israel is actually the only stable place that Arabs are looking up to and wish to have connection and good relations with. And that now brings me to the annexation that is around the corner, the annexation of the Jordan Valley. Look, a lot of you don't probably understand, what does it mean, annexation? So let me explain. Israel in 1948 was born, and at the War of Independence, right then, Jordan invaded and took over Judea and Samaria, which are the mountains of Israel that the prophets were always talking about. This is where the patriarchs used to walk. This is where they lived. This is where they're all buried. This is where so much of the Old Testament took place. And it's interesting because the Jordanians invaded and took those mountains. In 1967, Israel pushed the Jordanians back to where they belong, beyond the Jordan River. And this is the first time in history, I think, the first time in history, that we have a land that is called occupied land, but actually we occupied it from someone who is not the owner. I mean, the Jordanians don't claim ownership over Judea and Samaria. This is the first time the world is giving some sort of a status to a nation that never existed, called Palestinians. They never existed. There was no nation called Palestinians. They never existed. They came from, these are Arabs that migrated mostly when the Jews returned back to their land because they saw opportunities. I want to urge you to read the book From Time Immemorial of Joan Peters and read the whole story. But the narrative was that now Israel occupied Judea and Samaria, what's known as the West Bank. Now, Israel is now going for the first time since it was born to annex what's going to be their eastern border. Believe it or not, we have border, but it's not recognized by anyone. Let me show you. This is the map of the West Bank. As you can see, it's in the heart of Israel. And you can see Jordan is beyond the Jordan River. And you can see all that orange-colored area. This is the Jordan Valley, running all the way from the north to the south to the Dead Sea, and even you see parts of the northern part of the Dead Sea itself. Israel is about to annex that part, which means to declare it as part of the state of Israel, and anyone that lives there will be given Israeli citizenship automatically. And that will, for the first time since Israel was born in modern days, that will give us a recognized full sovereign eastern border. Now, not that we're even taking land from someone else, we're taking this land from, our own heritage. Look, there's tons of Israelis that already live there. The Israeli military is there. Look, the annexation will not move anyone out of his home or not cause anyone to be relocated. Look, the Palestinians will live in the Palestinian villages. The Israelis will live in the Israeli settlements, and the military will continue, as it has been doing for the last 50 years, to patrol the border with Jordan. And trust me, the Jordanians want the Israelis to be on their border and not the Palestinians. And look what we're doing when we actually take that orange piece of land. What we're doing is we are creating a situation where the Palestinians will never be able to take over Jordan and create a huge conglomerate that will threaten Israel. Now, let me make it very clear. The Palestinians already tried once to take over Jordan. They tried to kill the Jordanian king in September of 1970, the Black September. And if it wasn't for Israel's help, King Hussein would have been killed and he would have been toppled. Yasser Arafat later on was smuggled out of Jordan into Egypt dressed like a woman. Ugly woman, but dressed like a woman. And ladies and gentlemen, it's not like it's fantasizing. It has happened already. The king of Jordan is not having a very stable throne at the moment. And so by annexing the Jordan Valley, not only that we are strengthening our own grip over that area, but we are preventing a future possibility of Palestinians toppling the Jordanian king and taking over and creating something that we don't want to have. So I'm telling you, folks, there is an opportunity to do that right now with the friendliest president in the White House. And the reason why, look, and you're probably going to say, oh, it's going to be terrible. Oh, it's going to be, the world will come to an end. No, look, the Egyptians are having other headaches right now with what's going on in Libya and what's going on in Eritrea and Ethiopia with no water flowing from the Nile down all the way to the delta of the Nile. The Egyptians have that problem over there. I can tell you that the Arabs are watching Turkey and Iran threatening them. And I can also show you some more things that are going on. I want you to see, guys, what is going on right now in, let's see, Tunisia. Riots, as I said, in Tunisia. Take a look at it right now. Riots in Tunisia. I'm showing it to you right now. Watch this. Now, that's just riots in Tunisia, folks. This is not the end. We have riots also and the ongoing civil war in Syria. Believe it or not, just yesterday, I want you to see this picture. This is a crater created in the main road east of the southern Syrian city of Daraa, where the rebels basically buried explosive, detonated it, and 9 soldiers were killed and 35 were wounded. And maybe that tally will go much higher. among the soldiers of Bashar al-Assad. Apparently, not only that the civil war is not over, it is reignited at the same city where it all started, in Daraa, all the way down south. If that's not enough, ladies and gentlemen, look at this. This is the Iranian rial. Folks, the sanctions work, and the Iranian rial has crossed the 200,000 rial for $1. Now it's already 205,000. In other words, a person that has $5 is already a millionaire in Iranian rials. And look, in their official exchange rate, it's 50,000. But in the streets where the business really happens, it crossed the 205,000 rials for $1. And that, of course, is not stopping the Iranians from having some what we call maneuvers in the Mediterranean. I'm trying to see if there is a picture. Yeah, maneuvers right here. Look, they're trying more and more missiles with long range, middle range, and short range. They put all their money in developing more and more and more weapons. So that's what's going on in Iran right now. A lot of people probably heard, or if you read in the completely biased, liberal, progressive Israeli media, yes, if you're reading the Jerusalem Post, and if you're reading the Times of Israel, and if you're reading Haaretz, these are all progressive media. These are the New York Times and the Washington Post of Israel. These are progressive, liberal lunatics. So I wouldn't really take much of my information from these newspapers. But if you read those newspapers, you got the impression that the United Arab Emirates is not into the Israeli annexation and is threatening to somehow no longer continue improving relations between Israel and the Arab world. That's baloney. The person that arranged the interview of the UAE ambassador to Washington is Chaim Saban, an Israeli producer. So we talked about the Iranians, we talked about the UAE. Look, the media, the fake media, is trying to feed you with all the lies and the deception. The Arabs actually said the day after, the foreign minister of the United Arab UAE, the foreign minister said, look, we may have had some sort of disagreement politically with Israel, but I do want you to know that we will continue collaborating with Israel in so many other fields. So don't be confused. The Arabs need us right now at this moment more than we need them. They need our intelligence. They need our cybersecurity. They need our weapons, and they need our collaboration in agriculture and in the medicine world and all of that. So I just want you to understand that. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Europeans that are so, I would say, it's almost like they're obsessed with the Palestinian issue. The Europeans are threatening with sanctions and all that, but I would suggest to both France and Germany to mind their own business, because right now it's much safer for Palestinians here and Israelis here than it's safer for French in France and for Germans in Germany, just so you know. I will show you what is going on, by the way, in one of the largest cities in Germany at the moment. One of the largest cities in Germany at the moment, this is the city of Stuttgart. That's Germany. And last week I showed you Dijon in France, showed you Paris in France. I don't want to show you what's going on also in so many other places in Europe. Europe, mind your own business. You've got all these Muslim migrants that are right now taking over. They are no longer sitting there quietly. They are now, they're setting the rules of engagements. They destroy the police cars. There are no entry zones for police all over Europe. The last thing you want is to mess up with Israel right now, that is the only island of stability in this part of the world, by giving us all these empty threats regarding the annexation. I want to tell you that the Saudis officially released a statement against the annexation, but non-officially, the Saudi prince is one of our best friends at the moment. He understands that he has to pay lip taxes for the Palestinians and the Arabs for the Arab cause, but in reality, no Arab country that has some sort of connection with Israel right now is willing to give up and to stop that thing. And so I just wanted you to understand the annexation is actually, if I may say, this is the last frontier. If Israel is not going to annex the Jordan Valley, we are actually allowing another Chaz to be created. Chaz, this Capitol Hill autonomous zone in Seattle. Why? Because this is exactly what the Palestinians want to create. A territory where Israel is not allowed in, where no law, no order, and they can do whatever they want. And not only that, they want to be part of Israel, and they don't want any Israelis in their area. So now when we created our own eastern border and we have our own settlements with our own sovereignty, they can say goodbye to that particular trick of creating their own thing in the heart of Israel that will later on completely paralyze us from doing whatever we need to do. Now I would like to take you, this is now the second part of the update. I would like to take you to what happened in the city. By the way, before I forgot, in the last few weeks, or especially in the last few days, clashes between India and China are almost on daily basis. I want to show you how the Indians are protesting at the moment. Indians are protesting against the Chinese. Look what this is the Chinese president. They set on fire his images and puppets. Tons of Indian soldiers were killed by Chinese in the last 2 weeks or so. Apparently, China is trying to reach that part of the world as well. The Indians are not happy about it, and that's what's going on there. And I'm thinking about it biblically. Something has to somehow keep that part of the world busy when the Antichrist is rising from Europe. So I'm thinking, who knows if a war there could be imminent. Now let me pause and let me take you to what happened yesterday in Germany. Same Germany that is lecturing Israel about annexation and our sovereignty. Let me show you what is going on in Germany. And I want you, while you see that, keep in mind that Thomas Jefferson, that George Washington, that Winston Churchill, that Teddy Roosevelt, and all these heroes are being torn down and vandalized. And I want you to see what is being in a celebration, what is being set up in Germany right now. And I'm talking about the city of Gleisenkirche in Germany. Ladies and gentlemen, watch this. Vladimir Lenin. And look at the flags that they're going to wave. Ladies and gentlemen, you just saw correct. The country of Germany that was torn for decades by communism, and finally in 1990 managed to get over that, and finally managed to reunite itself and finally managed to try to forget the horrors of communism, what you just saw is the erecting of Vladimir Lenin's statue in a main city where the Communist Party's flags are all over, and the young people are excited. And by the way, you see the same thing in other parts of Europe and, may I also say, in America. And the reason why I want to say that is I would like to show you something, because what we're watching, how the Democrats in America, together with Antifa and together with Black Lives Matter and together with the media, you can see what they're doing. They're changing everything. I would like to show you something, a poster. Let me show you. This is a poster of the Cultural Revolution of Mao Zedong, the founder of the Communist Party of China. And look at this. Approximately in May 1966 to late 1976, in reality, a power struggle. And look what he says: destruction of four olds campaign. Old customs, old culture, old habits, and old ideas. This is what we see right now. Don't tell me it's not what we're all watching at the moment. We're watching the destruction of old customs, old culture, old habits, and old ideas at the moment. And may I remind all of you that Mao Zedong, the founder of Communist China, was in charge of probably the largest genocide in the history of this world. A book that was written called Mao's Great Famine, written by Frank de Coetter. I want to tell you, I read parts of this book and I was shocked. I'd like to tell you about that book, something that might shock you, and that is, of course, this. Mao emerged as one of the greatest mass murderers in history, responsible for the death of at least 45 million people, more than Hitler, more than Stalin. 45 million people between 1958 and 1962. Between 58 and 62. It is not merely the extent of the catastrophe that dwarfs earlier estimates, but also the manner in which many people died. And I hope your small children are not watching, or at least not listening to what I'm about to say right now. Between 2 and 3 million victims were tortured to death or summarily killed, often for the slightest infraction. When a boy stole a handful of grain in Hunan village, local boss Xiong Dechang forced his father to bury him alive. The father died of grief a few days later. The case of Wang Jiao was reported to central leadership. It's one of his ears was chopped off, his legs were tied with iron wire, a 10-kilogram stone was dropped on his back, and then he was branded with a sizzling tool. Punishment for what? For digging up a potato. That's Mao Zedong. That's the communism that is now being hailed and is being praised by these, stupid youngsters that know nothing about life and obviously know nothing about history. It is crazy. It is very crazy. But you're maybe asking yourself, who is behind this? What is really going on here? And I would like to tell you that it is much darker than you think. Some of you already know that I have investigated for the last few years, at least for the last 10 years, the topic of the enlightened ones, the Illuminati. And a lot of you may be turned off by hearing that, but look, They exist. Everybody knows they exist. It's a small group of families, of industrialists and bankers that owns most of the capital in this world. And the problem is that they still don't have full control over the world. It's not easy. You can be the wealthiest person on planet Earth and still not control so many countries and so many cultures. You have a problem with nationalism. You have a problem with culture. You have a problem with habits. You have a problem with tradition. So how do you do something about it? And what they do, they borrowed from Hegel, the philosopher, this idea of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. This is a very interesting thing. The thesis was capitalism. It's unrestricted competition. The antithesis was socialism, complete cooperation. The synthesis that they came up with was supposed to be communism, enforced cooperation leading to ultimate truth, utopia, where no government would be required, everyone would be in peace and in equality. Isn't that what they're all looking for right now? They don't want police, they don't want government, they want to have their own autonomous places, and they want to live in utopia. That utopia, by the way, was broken just yesterday when gunshots were heard, and there's at least one person killed in Chaz over there. And it's just the beginning. Just don't get me wrong. We're watching them falling by their own ideas. But sadly, this utopian dream did not come about, sadly for them, yes. And Hegel's theory apparently didn't work. By the way, most of Hegel's theories never work. They're nice as a theory, but they never work because there's one component you forget to include. And that's the God component. And that's God-fearing people, and that's righteousness, and that's scriptures. You know, and this is why, as long as we, the believers, are here, this cannot work. One of the things that the restrainer restrains is exactly this thing. The thought that man, by his own force, can bring about such utopia and life with peace and equality. It's just not working because there's sin. And the only way sin can be called sin is if somebody exposes it and calls it sin. And what makes sin sin? It's the fact that there is righteousness standing right opposite. I mean, nobody could understand he's a sinner until God, brought forth the law, and then now you understand, now you know you're a sinner. So how can you live in sin without thinking or being bothered by that knowledge when you remove and when you're no longer having that person who knows and calls it a sin? Now, the Illuminati's main modus operandi, way of working, is pitting one side against the other, using a theory of Hegel, of thesis versus antithesis, and creating the synthesis. Every force tends to have an opposite counterforce. The conflict between the two results in a new situation, and the synthesis, that's what it's named. And the Illuminati makes business, ladies and gentlemen, makes business to be the synthesis. And thus no problem situation is ever nipped in the bud for them. It is rather forested and used just as the Soviet Union was forested and used. They used it. Double talk, double think. George Orwell in his book actually knew what he's talking about. When he was inventing those two expressions, I categorically deny, which means it will happen a bit later, and peace, which means war by other means. They all say peace. By the way, what do they say? Justice, no peace. You know what they mean? It means you don't give us what we want, you will not have peace. You will not have quiet. You will not have law. You will not have order. That's basically no peace, no justice, no peace. Justice is what they think they deserve. It's not real justice biblically. And when a real power move is made, it is usually done secretly and sudden, and we can see that by these people. But I want you to know that they are doing a lot of social engineering, and easily manipulated rabble is what is required. That's all. Mixed population groups with weak morals, weak traditions, low educational standards, and weak group willpower are the aim. That's where they go. Those with special attitudes can be taken out and trained to serve the Illuminati for what? For technical purposes, security purposes, or part of the propaganda apparatus. The middle class, by the way, is becoming the surplus for this to requirement and will be reduced almost to relative poverty. That's what they want. Reduce it to relative poverty. Mockery and submission of the manners and morals of societies which show any resistance. You need to control the media, which they do. You need to control the fashion industries. Education system are essential and components in that strategy, folks. They want everybody to just dance to their rhythm. Free love, the cult of the youth. Mockery of Christianity, it's essential. You know, it's unbelievable. They conduct unrelenting economic warfare. They want the economy to be down. Look, you're asking yourself, how come someone who lives in a country wants his economy down? That's their aim, basically. You have to control an exploitation of the standards of public health. Why do you think the Obamacare was so, desired? The sale of prescription drugs is huge businesses generating mega profits. Medical operations and treatments can also be very profitable to big businesses. These extreme treatments have their place, but are overused for the sake of profit. Understand? Look, they want you to be poor. They want you to be uneducated. They want you to have jobs that means almost nothing. They want you not to succeed. They want you to actually demand stuff you never worked for. They want you to reach a point where hard work is not paying off. That's how they do things. So they create capitalism, they create communism or Marxism, and that's what we have. And just so you understand, what we're watching right now is something that Karl Marx already wrote in a book that is called The Constant or Continuous Revolution. He wrote it in his book that he wrote, The Holy Family, in 1844. We know that Trotsky, Leon Trotsky, one of the founders of the Russian Revolution, actually put it in his book that was written in 1906, by the way. And you have to understand, they look at capitalism as a hostile thing that might threaten the stability of socialism, and that's why you have to destabilize capitalism not only from outside but also from the inside. The weak levels in capitalist countries won't be able to do it all by themselves. That's why at the time Russia needed to help them. And that's what the Russian Revolution was. They also sent missionaries, in a sense, messengers to other countries. They actually looked at capitalist countries as countries that are going backward. They, with their utopia, they were the progressive. They move forward. They progress. And we know that they continue that. They never stop for a minute, folks. They never, ever stop for a minute. And it's interesting because they don't want to listen to you. They do whatever they want. Communism is enjoying a comeback right now. And unfortunately, I can tell you one thing. The only thing that is now standing between communism and America is one person called Donald Trump. And they all understand that. And they understand that, and this is exactly why they have a major plan to rig the elections. And the mail-in ballots are the major way to do that. I mean, yesterday, Republicans in New Jersey received ballots in the mail. And do you want to know what they received? I'll tell you what they received. They received a ballot that had only Democrats candidates, not even the Republicans received that. Only ballots with Democratic candidates were listed in that thing. President Trump tweeted today, "This is going to be the most rigged elections in the history of the United States. It has to be canceled. You cannot vote like that." Guys, I never heard of anything like that. The trick to oversell tickets to the Tulsa, Oklahoma rally worked. You know, they can never win in a democratic way. So they use tricks. They use deception. Communists, by the way, never took power anywhere in a democratic way. They don't believe in doing so. They will take it by force. They will take it by deception. And this is where I believe we all must understand that the November elections are the most crucial elections in the history of the United States of America. Look, it's all about not just America's future, but it's also America's identity and America's past. When Teddy Roosevelt's statue is not even removed from the street, it's being removed from a museum by Mayor de Blasio. Crazy guy. When George Washington, look, I mean, I must tell you, when I saw this, I almost cried. This is the statue of George Washington in Oregon, in Portland, Oregon. It was vandalized, it was burned, and then it was pulled down. And I will save what was from you, what was sprayed on it. This is the founder of the United States of America. This is the first president of the United States of America. This is someone who was an amazing Christian. And by the way, just so you know, he was a Freemason before Freemasonry was infected by the Illuminati. And he actually warned the Freemasons that the Illuminati are actually moving inside the Freemasonry and infecting it to be a Luciferian organization. That's George Washington. We're watching America in its darkest hour. And in the November elections, I have a feeling they can have the potential of a civil war if things are not going to, and this is, by the way, where I believe prayer is needed so much. I want you to know that if America wasn't so important, the world wouldn't try to do what it is trying to do right now to that country. I know that America exported a lot of garbage to the world, but America also exported so much of the gospel to the whole world. And America was there, appointed by God to help the young state of Israel. And America also helped so many countries in Europe and in Asia to have freedom, liberty, and democracy. And I want you to know that this is exactly why there is a concentrated target to destroy that country, not only from outside, but mostly from inside. By the way, prophetically, I can see why America is no longer standing by Israel in Ezekiel's war. Prophetically, I can also see why America will not be relevant when the Ezekiel war will start. Something has to happen there. Something has to happen either from the outside or from the inside. Again, my prayer, and I've been saying that forever, my prayer is that it's not going to be civil war, that it's not going to be an attack from outside, but it's going to be the rapture that will eventually bring down everything. Because if the rapture took place right now, probably America is the only country on planet Earth that its own government is going to be completely gone. I mean, think about it. There's unprecedented number of Christians in key positions in the U.S. administration today. Not all, but many. And I don't know a country like that anywhere else around the world with such a thing. So I'm just trying to tell you folks, if you're an American, like never before, stop the garbage that the Black Lives Matter is trying to tell you. They are the front of a dark force that wants to bring communism and Marxism, that wants to take over what America was and is and destroy it for the sake of utopia that can never, ever exist. And it might exist, by the way, only when we're out of here. Remember, we are the restrainer, the Holy Spirit in us. And I would like you to be reminded of the verses from Ephesians chapter 6, because this is important that we all understand. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Why is he saying that? Because when we look at things around us, we tend to be weak. Look, I have my moments when I'm tired when I see all these things. But he says, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wills of the devil. For then, watch what he's saying. We do not wrestle against flesh and blood. You think it's Nancy Pelosi? You think it's Chuck Schumer? You think it's de Blasio? You think it's Governor Cuomo? No. They are just puppets. They are just mummies. Ladies and gentlemen, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of what? Of the darkness of this age. The darkness of these are dark, dark, dark people. These are those families that are controlling most of this world's economy. They are having their own rituals, their satanic rituals. They are dark, dark, dark. It's way beyond being a democratic, being on CNN. These people are in the level of worshiping Lucifer out in the open. And then, against also spiritual hosts of the wickedness in the heavenly places. Look, Satan was thrown down, but he's not yet on planet Earth per se. Yes, he is the prince of this world. Yes, the mystery of lawlessness is already at work, but we're still here. He cannot be thrown down here until we're out there. We're up, and then he's down. And I want to tell you, folks, those principalities are still in the heavenly places. Not as high, probably, as where, Jesus is at the right hand of the Father, but they are still there. We are watching right now the most unprecedented satanic and diabolic attack that is a concentrated effort. And you know why? Let me tell you. Because November 3rd is coming. That's why. Because the damage the current administration in America did to Planned Parenthood, to the Muslim Brotherhood, to the terrorist organizations, and to Iran, to Venezuela, and the support they gave to the land of Israel, to Jerusalem, to the Golan Heights, to the unborn babies, to Christians that are persecuted all around the world, I want to tell you that they cannot stand it anymore, those powers and principalities. They cannot stand it anymore. They cannot take 4 more years. They cannot. There is a diabolic concentrated effort right now and it's all over. And by the way, they inspire others elsewhere, in France and in Germany, and now also in the Middle East. And this is exactly what leaders such as the Egyptian president are afraid, that it will spill over to his place from Libya and from Tunisia. We're watching the spirit of lawlessness. We're watching diabolic effort like never before. And why? Because of November 3rd. Because it's too much for them. So I'm not sure if we're going to be here or we're out of here. But if we're still here, you know what you need to do. You know what you need to pray for. You know who you need to vote for. And you know that the gospel is the only thing that will never change. And it has the power to save you. Do not be ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. There is no other name under heaven by which man can be saved. No other name but Jesus, Yeshua. And if you are an Arab, if you're a Muslim, if you're a Hindu, if you are a Buddhist, you cannot say that you believe in the living God. You don't have a Messiah that died for you. God is holy. We are not. You need a Savior. You need that peace that surpasses all understanding. You need the promise to be taken out of here before things will go bad. Look, the book of Revelation is telling us that everything we see right now is nothing comparison to what is coming, where 1/3 of the population of the world is going to be gone. 2 billion will be wiped out. Natural disasters and catastrophes you cannot even fathom will happen. You want to be out of here? Do you want to be in the presence of God? Then believe and confess your faith and be baptized and walk with him. If you will walk with him today, you will reign with him tomorrow. If you will deny him today, you might not even see tomorrow. So I want to encourage all of you folks to choose him. Dark days are ahead of us. Terrible days are ahead of us. But we have strong assurance, strong foundation, blessed hope, and that's the Lord Jesus. And he will never change. And he promised, in this world you're going to have tribulations, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome this world. Father, we thank you for your word, for your promises. We stand on them right now. We come against the powers of evil and darkness, and we are the light of the world. And we want to shine that light. And I pray over anyone who hasn't accepted you yet. Anyone in the Arab world that might watch it, in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, in Australia, New Zealand, America, anywhere that is watching, may they just fall on their knees right now and beg for your mercies, accept your forgiveness, and live with the salvation that is freely given because Jesus died 2,000 years ago for us. Thank you. יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you, be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance towards you and give you peace. That peace that surpasses all understanding. It can only come from the Prince of Peace, who is the Lord of peace, who can give you peace now and forever, here and everywhere. And his name is Yeshua, Jesus. He is Prince of Peace. He can be your King if you only accept him into your heart. In his name we pray. Amen. Amen. If you want to follow us, ladies and gentlemen, you can do so on social media. You can subscribe to our newsletter on beholdisrael.org, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. We're just Behold Israel. And of course, As always, I want to recommend, if you haven't done so, get my 2 books on these end times, in these last days, the last hour and the day approaching. You can get them on our website, or you can also get them anywhere on Amazon or whatever. Folks, thank you again for watching. God bless you, and shalom from Galilee, from Israel.